All right, we are live. Washington WREIA, July 2022. I'm going to give everybody up. Got to adjust my screen here a little bit. Give everybody a few minutes to kind of join us. If you are on a broadcast tonight and want to say hello to anyone or everyone, feel free to do that. It's always helpful to know kind of who's on our stream here tonight. We got a great night. We got a lot of participation, which I really appreciate. I'm going to give people a few minutes to kind of join us here. We asked in one of our emails if anybody had any comments about certain areas that maybe they're looking at to invest, or questions about different things for rentals and so forth. We got some great comments. So we're going to kind of sprinkle those throughout the evening and answer some of those questions for you. I responded to a few over the course of the day. I couldn't get to them all, and I wanted just to kind of incorporate all of you into that process too, so you can get some of the responses that I sent out to people. Kim, good to see you. Dominic, as always, let's get the party started. Not quite sure about that, but we'll give you some good information tonight. Tom is here. Tom had a question. I'm going to answer that for Tom this evening. Again, these meetings, if you're new to Washington WREIA, really are much better with you all participating. So certainly if you have any questions throughout or a comment, feel free to type that in and we'll try to answer that as we go. Tonight, as a lot of you are joining us here now, kind of coming into the stream, we're going to be talking about some of the best places to buy houses to flip, renovate, and sell. We're going to talk about some areas throughout the country, good places to invest in rentals. And we're also going to be talking about some different areas in the country for long-term holds. Now, again, we'll start the evening by kind of differentiating between what is a rental and what is a long-term hold. What I kind of meant by that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it tonight, is when I meant rentals, I meant cash flow rentals that you might hold for a period of time. Maybe after that time, you've had a little appreciation, you've had some good cash flow. You might take a few of those rentals, maybe one by one, or bundle a few, and do some 1031 tax-free exchanges to kind of advance your way up, if you will, into long-term holds. And what I mean by long-term holds kind of is just those legacy holds, properties that for now, right now, you have no intention of selling, not in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. You may do some more tax-free exchanges. You may morph those into maybe an apartment building, maybe a couple more rental houses, maybe different parts of the country, diversify your portfolio a little bit. Maybe you retire to Hawaii and you want to move some properties here from Maryland out to Hawaii. So when I talk about long-term holds, I mean really long-term, meaning you're going to own those properties for the foreseeable future, maybe for college educations, retirement, pass on to your kids, whatever the case may be, versus rentals, which is kind of that portion of your business, portion of your portfolio that's going to be providing you some cash flow as you go. And then, of course, I think we all understand flipping. Jim, good to see you. Vanessa, thanks as always for joining us. Good to see all you folks. As I said, we asked for different areas, different questions from folks, and we got a number of them in great areas, great questions, and I'm going to try to answer those kind of as we go. So 3 different areas tonight: flips, cash flow, and long-term holds, or what I like to say, kind of some legacy properties. So let's start out with flipping properties. All right, let's kind of jump right in. And as I said, please, if you have any questions, if anything that I say doesn't make sense, which definitely happens quite a bit, feel free to type in a comment or a question. We'll try to answer that. We kind of move along in the WREIA meetings fairly quickly. If you're new to this whole process with Washington WREIA, we do welcome you. We're just a group of investors here in the Washington, D.C. metro area for the most part. We do reach outside this area, certainly as we've gone online. But just a group of investors that do a lot of different things kind of throughout our area. We buy, renovate, and sell properties. A lot of us own rental properties, residential and some commercial. Some folks in the group own notes. Those notes can be performing notes, meaning they're paying them cash flow every single month. And some of us own notes that are not performing, called non-performing notes, where we're trying to either restructure that note with the owner of the property, or we're going through a friendly foreclosure or a short sale, trying to make money, a spread on that note that we bought at a discount. So we have some folks doing that. We certainly have a group of realtors involved in Washington WREIA. We have mortgage loan officers. We have people that just are information junkies that like to join us throughout the year to get more information on real estate investment. So it's a very active group. A lot of folks in this group have done a lot of different things. So it's a great place to network. It's a great place to get your questions answered. Great place to gather a few names, and to keep involved in real estate investment. As a lot of you know, we are going through changing of the economy. There's no doubt about it. It's very confusing economy, and for a lot of people, I think. The whole pandemic has kind of thrown a wrench in everything. I don't know if anyone really predicted, and haven't seen too many predictions about how the real estate market would to react to March 2020, the way that it forced people to work from home, how it forced people out of the cities, and a lot of them haven't returned yet. A lot of people are working from their home. A lot of people want to work from their home. That allowed people to spread out a little bit, go to different parts of the country, kind of redefine their lifestyle, redefine what it meant to them to work. So all these things had a great effect on, obviously, in the real estate market. And what I'm getting at, we're obviously coming through that. Supply chain disruptions, a lack of affordable housing, interest rates at all-time lows. So we had all of these factors kind of coming at us, and now, and then a ton of federal money, a ton of stimulus money, some money, in my opinion, that was certainly needed to support, underpin some of the small businesses around the country, to keep people employed. Paychecks protection program was invaluable to a lot of small businesses, restaurants, and real estate companies, and everybody that owns a small business. Just the extended unemployment benefits. Doesn't matter if you're for that or against that. The fact is that happened. So there's just a ton of this money coming into our economy. And now we're probably going to be paying the piper. Rates have gone up. Rates have gone up significantly. Justin sent me an article before we started about a couple hours ago that, puts it in black and white. I mean, for a lot of people, these rate hikes have increased mortgage payments by 44%. Folks, that has to have an effect. It has to, and that affects a lot of first-time home buyers, where a lot of the flips take place. Not all of them, but certainly in my business, I try to focus on working class neighborhoods for first-time home buyers, putting a house in excellent shape, and then offering that out to the marketplace. So it definitely has an effect on us as investors, and we have to pay attention to that. And there's other factors going on. The jobs report came out, and it was excellent. There's still a lot of jobs out there in the marketplace. The supply of houses is still not, any great shakes. I mean, we're still way behind in the many houses needed for this next generation of home buyers coming in. We have this whole generation of home buyers now ready to buy a house. I mean, they've waited. They're a little bit older maybe than the generation before, but they're ready to buy a house. You don't see tons and tons of signs, certainly around all the neighborhoods. I certainly don't. And I vary from counties to the city to, some expensive houses, some less expensive houses. And I don't see a ton of signs running around neighborhoods. I don't think the supply has been overwhelming. So there's a lot of things happening. Now the Federal Reserve is talking about bumping rates again. So how does all this play out in our real estate investment business? And you're going to see tons of blogs. You're going to see presentations like this from other people around this city, around the country, talking about markets and changes and people trying to predict what happens. And it can be extremely confusing, a little bit overwhelming if you let it be. But again, I want to just step back a minute. We need to focus on our own little economy. And if you're investing here in Washington, D.C., where we talk about other parts of the country too, you have to really pay attention and not read all the headlines that have to do with markets that have nothing to do with Washington, D.C. We certainly are unique in this area. We're home to the federal government, and we're home to a lot of other industries too. And so our market doesn't generally gyrate, if you will, as much as some other markets around the country. But you have to pay attention to that. So let's talk about flipping houses. Whenever I read articles of a national media or someone that really doesn't know anything about flipping houses, they're always talking about, well, you can't flip houses anymore because the market's not going up. They totally don't understand the proper way to buy, renovate, and sell a house, flipping houses. Their whole premise is that the only time you can flip a house is when the market is accelerating. And that's just not true. Those of you that have been around this business for a long time, and I've been doing it for 25 plus years, know that it's all in the buy. It's all in the purchase. As long as you have the ability to scout out and to market your services to people that need those services and buy that house at a level that you can buy it, you can close it, you can renovate the house up to the neighborhood standards. You can hold that house through that process, sell it, have all the selling expenses, just basic property analysis. And if you don't know how to do that, reach out to someone that does it. You certainly can reach out to me or other members of groups of WREIA and sit down and understand how to property analyze a flip. And if you do all those things correctly, it doesn't matter if the market isn't going up. As long as you have a stabilized after repair value and you can plug in your numbers, however you want to do that, you can still make really, really good money flipping homes. The market doesn't have to go up. Now, if the market's going up and every house that goes to the market is being listed for $10, $15, $20,000 more than the last house, does that help us as flippers? Absolutely. It's fantastic, right? You get that extra little bump. You can make mistakes and still make money. Instead of making 30, you make 50,000. Instead of making 70, you make $90,000, depending on the price point of your home. So absolutely helps, but it's not the end all for us to flip homes. The end all for us flipping homes is to understand our market services and who we market to, right? And how to properly analyze a good property. Now, where the challenge of flipping houses comes in is when the market is adjusting basically downward. That is when it's a bit scary. Even though most of our flips we're trying to get through, again, depending on the scope of the renovation, if you're doing a $250,000 renovation in DC, it might take you a little longer than 60 days. In fact, I'm going to promise you it will. Then you might have to be a little bit careful. But if you're buying and selling, houses that need 60, 90 days of renovations, you can generally get in and out of those houses and understand what that value is going to be when you're selling that house. But during this change, during the changing of pricing, that's when it gets a little, sketchy, if you will. Give you an example. I had a great split foyer house in Capitol Heights. My bread and butter houses, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath up, 1 bedroom, 1 bath down, living room, dining room, nice kitchen, nice family room with a fireplace, put a little deck or porch in the back. I love those houses. They're simple. People love them. They're really good houses to live in. They're easy to comp because there's a neighborhood of those types of homes. And I had this house pegged at 420. And if I would have had this house on in March, I'm sure I would have had 5 or 6 offers. I probably would have been able to bump to 430 or 435. But because I bought the house and we went through renovation and I hit the market right when the market was softening, right when rates were going up and where people were getting a little bit nervous, I didn't get to 420. I actually got closer to 400. So now all of a sudden my profit, right? My profit isn't what I necessarily expected. Now I still made money and I'm still fine with that, but I didn't make all the money that I could have. And that's kind of if you have 7, 8 of those going on at one time, that can hurt your revenue for your year, but it shouldn't kill you. It shouldn't put you out of business as long as you did your numbers correctly. So it's that turn that's a little bit scary. And we're still in that turn. Nobody quite knows. And don't believe all these experts. They don't know. They don't know. If they knew, they would have been buying every house they put their hands on in March 2020. They don't know. They just look back and say, this is what happened. But indications, history tells us that with interest rates going up, more expensive to buy a home, homeowners are squeezed, inflation is all around us, that the housing market's going to slow down a little bit. So when your next buys and your next flips, just be a little bit more careful. You can't factor, I'm going to get $10,000 more than the last house. Maybe you have to factor, I'm going to get $10,000, $15,000 less. But don't read all these headlines of the market's falling, it's going to be catastrophic. A lot of times they're talking about markets that went way, way up. Markets in the West, markets like Boise, Idaho, Spokane, Washington, Denver, Salt Lake City, Phoenix, parts of Florida, Sarasota, all these different markets that went just exploded, and now they're coming back to earth a little bit. People are lowering their prices. I'll go through some of the markets with some price drops. My point with flipping is it's still viable. That was a long-winded answer, still viable. All right, now, where do we flip? So flipping, again, is a function of understanding what you're looking for and how to analyze a property. So literally, folks, you can do this in any market in the country where houses are selling. I would stay away from markets where the prices are adjusting dramatically because you don't know what that price point is going to be, right, in 4, 5, 6, 7 months. It could be much less, and it's hard to predict that after repair value. Here's some markets that I pulled up that had the highest price drops in last month, in June of 2022. Okay. I mentioned Boise. So all these markets, sellers adjusted their prices downward. Okay. So they're coming off the highs and they're pricing them downwards because they want to sell their home. They still probably have ridiculous appreciation if they bought the house 3 or 4 years ago, but they're coming down. Markets like Boise, I mentioned Denver, Salt Lake, Tacoma, Washington, Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is interesting. I have relative, my brother's wife is from Grand Rapids. I know a few people that invest there. They've had tremendous growth. It was a very inexpensive market, but now 50% of the listings in the market are reducing their prices. Boise, 60% of the houses are reducing their prices. Sacramento, California, always been a very expensive market, 50%. Seattle, Washington, 50%. Portland, Oregon, 45%. Tampa, I mentioned Sarasota, Tampa, tremendous price growth down there. 45% of the people are lowering their price. And then Indianapolis, which again was very surprising, 40%, 44% of people lowering their prices on their listing. So I may stay away from some of those markets where you're seeing a lot of price adjustments downward for a minute until prices stabilize. But folks, if you can buy right, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Pick a market, and we'll talk more about markets here in a minute, that, you have some ability. Remember, buying, renovating, selling houses is much different than holding a property for rental or long-term growth. With flips, if you're doing it in another state, another city, let's say Louisville, Kentucky, you need boots on the ground. You need someone to watch out for that property, meaning your renovation. Make sure that contractors showing up, make sure people are holding to schedules, make sure things are being done. That's a little tougher than finding a rental property, finding a good property manager, finding a tenant, and then collecting rent. So if you're going to do flips outside this area, my suggestion is that you spend some time in that city and you create your team. You create your team of contractors, realtors, title attorneys. Now, again, some of this stuff you could do nationally. I know there's title companies that will do properties all over the country. That's great. You can put those into your team. But your local team, probably should be pretty tight. I was reading the article. I'm sure a lot of you maybe saw it this past weekend, either online or in print. It was in, I believe, the Washington Post, but it was about Invitation Homes. And Invitation Homes was that conglomerate back in 2012 that started buying houses right and left. They were a product of Blackstone up in New York. Big money. And they were buying hundreds and hundreds and thousands of homes all across the country. And their goal was to, turn rental real estate into kind of the corporate structure. And I was always wondered how boots on the ground. They bought hundreds of houses in Orlando, 100 houses in Austin, hundreds of houses in California, hundreds of houses in North Carolina. And I thought, wow, how are they making all those repairs, $35,000 to $45,000 per house repair? And it comes out that a lot of the repairs have been incredibly shoddy. There was no permits, taken out for not changing a light fixture, but putting in whole additions, whole bedroom additions, whole bathroom additions, whole things that generally probably need a permit. And just the amount of issues and trouble and headaches from these contractors, it just goes back to my point. Now, again, it's funny money. It's guys collecting ridiculous salaries and money. It doesn't matter if they are successful or not. And the point is us, the smaller investors, we need to have that good crew if you want to flip houses outside the area. You don't have to. Washington D.C., in my opinion, Metro is a great place. Still to this day to be buying, renovating, selling houses. But if you're flipping homes and you want to go outside this area, there you go. Invitation homes, unpermitted work, leaky plumbing, fault. Read that article if you get a chance. It's fascinating. It's fascinating because you just wonder sometimes, how did these guys put together all these systems and how they, track all these things? It's like anything. We built rockets, to go to the moon in the 60s, and no one had any computers. They did it all by hand and all by, math by hand. So we're incredible species, but just to think that they can manage all those properties, not the managing of the tenants. I get that. It was always managing the renovations that was always kind of bizarre to me, how they could do that efficiently. And it looks like they probably didn't do as efficiently as people might have thought. So to wrap up the flipping part of this, if you have questions, let me know. But pick a market that you might have some familiarity with. But the main thing with flipping houses, you got to build that team. Obviously, you got to raise capital. Obviously, you have to have a marketing plan to find the houses. But once you find those houses and have the money, you got to have someone that can renovate those houses. And my experience is that you have to have someone you can trust thoroughly in order to manage and make sure that renovation goes smoothly so you can get that house back on the market in a timely manner and make some money. But the biggest scary part of flipping homes is the changeover, and we're kind of in that changeover. So you got to be maybe a little bit careful right now. And when I say careful, just be careful on your numbers. I wouldn't want to be doing too many houses that I was flipping that if I could not sell it, I also could not rent it. So that's higher end expensive homes. A little bit of risk, a little bit more risk in that business model right now. If you're still in relatively affordable homes that you're renovating, and hey, maybe everything just goes to hell in a handbasket and there's no way you can sell that house, well, at least you could put a renter in there because the rental rates are good. People still demand these homes. Your house is renovated, and you could park that renter in there for a year or two, whatever it would take to kind of correct the market and still survive. Then I'm all for it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the second thing, and that's kind of finding markets to invest as cash flow, as rentals. Now, the way I want to start this off, and again, if you have any questions or comments or anything, let us know, and I will answer those as we go. And we're going to factor some of these in this section that people sent me before the meeting. Now, the first thing I want to make very, very clear is that this is fun. We can talk about markets all across the country. We can debate them. We can have fun with it. We can crunch numbers. There's so many online tools. You can do analysis. Shoot, you don't even have to visit them. You can do your Google satellite maps and walk around the neighborhood and do all sorts of fun things these days that we never could have done, certainly 20, 25 years ago, probably not even 10 years ago. So this is a great subject, and it can be a lot of fun to discuss. But the first point I want to make is, no matter where you do this, my hope is that you do it or do something. That's the main thing. There's so many people that kind of stand around, they attend WREIA meetings, they go to seminars, and they never have the ability to pull the trigger on anything. Folks, the main thing is to get in the game. Does that make sense? None of us are going to be perfect predictors of where the best city is, where the best growth is going to be, where the best renters are going to be, where the best regulatory environment is going to be. Yeah, we can make our best guesses, but you're never going to know. Because if we did, folks, we all would have bought, more Microsoft stock when it first came out. We all would have bought, pick a market that soared. We all would have picked San Francisco 15 years ago, or parts of California that have huge appreciation, or just Washington, D.C. Look at what Washington, D.C. has done. We all would have bought as many houses as we could as rentals in Washington, D.C., and we'd be really, really wealthy right now. So you're never going to time the market, just like it's very difficult to time the stock market. I tell my son just graduated from college, my other one is going to college next year, that, hey, when you're investing, just live on less than you make. take a little bit of money. I don't care what it is. It's $100, $50, $2,000, whatever it is, and put it away. Invest in something. Invest in something. It could be stocks, could be bonds. You're never going to time the market. My oldest son has invested in crypto. Yes, he's got hurt, but he's got a long time horizon. Don't put all your eggs in that basket, but take some risk. You're young. But my main point is, let's get out there and buy some rental real estate if that's what you want to do. Don't always worry about what the best market is or the best timing or the best growth. Let's just pick one or a couple and get involved. Okay, that's my first point. Now, as far as other markets go, and we're going to take the DC metro market out of this. Let's say you want to go to a different market. And quite honestly, there are better markets for cash flow. For cash flow real estate, there's other better markets in DC because, I say DC broad, because our price point. That's why you don't see New York City, LA, Chicago, some of the bigger metropolitan areas of this country as great cash flow cities, unless you go into some of the inner core of some of these cities where it can be a little dicey, to invest in real estate unless you have a very, very good property manager. So we're going to take some of those out. So now we have cities around the country. So what are you looking for? Obviously, you're looking for somewhere where they're landlord friendly, right? You're going to be investing in real estate. You're going to have a few issues. You might have some permitting things. You might have some tenant issues. So you want states that have fairly friendly laws toward landlords. The second thing you want areas that are growing, that have jobs, that are seeing a population inflow, that have some prospects for the future. I mean, if you invested in Nashville, Tennessee, 10, 15 years ago, you would have done incredibly well, incredibly well. So you want cities that are kind of on the upswing, where people want to go. But that, again, you don't necessarily have to have that, right? It's all what you're trying to accomplish. Now, imagine most of you out there, your goal is to have cash flow. So you need cities where the price of housing, right, matches up with the average monthly rental of a property. If you're looking at residential properties, right, the rent ratio versus the price. So the old adage was 1%, right? $100,000 house, if you get 1% a month, $1,000 a month, you're golden. Still applies. It's getting harder and harder. So you might have to offset that. The rates the last few years with being so cheap offset a lot of that, but as rates have inched up. So you still want to kind of think about that. Areas that have good regulatory conditions. You want areas that are growing. You want areas where people want to be. Most importantly, you want areas where the rents are going to support the list price of the homes. And so where are some of those areas? And again, we had some great questions. I'm going to go through some of these. But the next thing I want to tell you is, before we go into these areas, is that I still believe, again, this is a bias for me. And, and I'm now in my late 50s. So if you're listening and you're 32, you might say, I don't believe that. And that's fine. There's no right or wrong answer. But I still believe that you should have a connection with the area that you're investing in. I think it helps. Maybe you visited on vacation and you really liked it and you want to go back there a little bit. Maybe you have a nephew in that. Maybe you grew up there. Maybe you grew up in the state and you know about another city in the state that's interesting. I still think it's a little bit of a comfort. You have a connection somewhere in the state. You don't have to. I know there's plenty of people sitting in the back of their computer and they're invested without even in visiting the state. I have a friend here that was in IT in Northern Virginia. He's accumulated 20 properties. 10 of them he's never even seen. Fantastic. I don't really believe in that. I believe probably you should see them, or someone should see them that you trust. And you get a feel for the area and feel for the neighborhood. But it's really kind of up to you. I'm giving you my opinion. And we could sit here and go through, hundreds of cities across the country that probably make sense. And it goes back to my first point, is let's get in the game. But if we have to name a few, all the cities, that we mentioned with the price drops, the values are coming down. They're obviously desirable cities. Places like Boise, Salt Lake, Denver, all those cities are desirable. Now, again, my bias is toward, and I think we have probably an East Coast Southern bias, maybe Midwest bias versus, Spokane, Washington pops up a lot. Well, Spokane, Washington is on the other side of the country. I've been there. I wasn't overly impressed with it, but for me, that's probably not where I want to invest my cash flows. I'm focused more a little bit down south. My wife's from South Carolina. I went to school in South Carolina. I've invested in areas around the Charleston area, areas around Greenville, South Carolina area. I've invested in parts of Texas, invested in parts of Florida. So you're going to kind of pick some of those areas that make sense to you. The other thing you want to consider is maybe cities away from a city. So let's take a Greenville, South Carolina. Well, Greenville has exploded. I mean, it's a different city than when I saw it, 20 years ago. But there's places around, Greenville that are interesting too. As that city grows out, you kind of determine where the growth of the city is. You can kind of get in front of that. Greer, South Carolina, Travelers Rest, South Carolina, Simpsonville. There's lots of different little areas, pockets. In Charleston, if you invested in Somerville outside of Charleston X amount of years ago, you've done very well. Mount Pleasant on the other side of the bridge there, you would have made a fortune in Mount Pleasant. We have some WREIA people that actually live down there now. So even little towns and cities around some of these cities might make sense. Like if Nashville, if you start kind of dotting around some of these areas and kind of invest in that. So what I would do is if you pick a city, people like Pittsburgh, if you go up north, Kimberly Stewart was on, she spent some time in Pittsburgh. So what I would do is I would look, once you've picked a city or two, kind of see where the growth is. All these cities grow one way or the other. Right. Greenville kind of grew kind of to the south at the beginning. Now it's creeping up toward Travelers Rest and Greer and some of the northern parts of outside of Greenville. Charleston grew, well, Charleston's on the ocean, so it can only go west, but it went a little east with Mount Pleasant, and now it's kind of coming up towards Somerville. I bought a property outside of Charleston in 2005 for $160,000. It's now worth about $700,000, and the cash flow has been excellent from day one. So you can identify some of these. Orlando pops up all the time. Where's the growth in Orlando? Figure that out and get in front of that. Charlotte grew definitely toward the west, down toward Rock Hill, down toward 77 corridor, down toward Columbia. It's grown all that way versus a little bit more than east. Raleigh, North Carolina grew out to the tech suburb where all the jobs were, everyone wanted to live. That was kind of east of the city. So you can see where these patterns happen, and then you get in front of those, and man, you can do well. Remember, cash flow rental real estate is also all about time. Some of you know that I bought a fair amount of properties around here with a couple investors back in the last correction. We were a little late. We bought a lot of our properties in 2013. Now I'm about 3-4 months of disposing of all those properties. We had them for 9 years. We did wonderful. The portfolio did great cash flow. A lot of the properties tripled, some quadrupled in value. One of the investors is getting a little older. He wanted to get out. And so, we started selling off some properties, doing a few exchanges and so forth. So, it does take a little bit of time, but during that time of growth, you want that cash flow. Now, there's other investors. Dominic's on the broadcast tonight. Dominic, I don't think he minds me telling you, he's not as much about the appreciation as he is totally about the cash flow. So he's looking at markets where he can pick off houses for $50,000, $60,000 and then put a Section 8 government subsidized renter in there and make great cash flow. He was telling me about a friend that had bought some houses in Missouri, and each house that this guy buys at the end of all expenses, he's netting about $785 a month in cash flow. That's pretty good. How many of those do you need to make a difference in your life? Maybe not retire, but a difference. 4 or 5, another 4,500, $5,000 coming into your account every single month, have a good property manager in place. So he's looking at markets where he can buy houses for 50, 60,000. I don't think Dominic really cares in 10 years if that house is only worth 70 or $80,000, as long as that money just keeps, it's like a toll booth, just keeps coming in every month, coming in, and he can count on it, count on a good portion of that. And then he can use that to reinvest, to spend, to live, all those things. So there's so much more to this than a 30-minute presentation. But hopefully this gives you a start. Let's go through some of these areas people threw in. Miss Hunter said, considering South Carolina, this is kind of funny. Somerville, which I mentioned, great area. Columbia, hey, Columbia, South Carolina. My mother-in-law's owned a property in Columbia, South Carolina forever. I think she paid $80,000 for it. I think it's worth $95,000 for it. Her cash flow has been tremendous. Okay. Her cash flow has been tremendous. It still is. You can buy a 4-bedroom, 2.5-bath house in Columbia, South Carolina for a couple $100,000, $229,000, $30,000. There's a company called Roofstock. Some of you have been members of Roofstock, where they'll send you properties with cash flow analysis and so forth. They really appeal to people doing 1031 exchanges. And Columbia comes up all the time. Lexington, South Carolina, all the time. Okay. So, Ms. Hunter, I think those areas are great. I love South Carolina. I mean, I think the cash flow has been good down there. Economies are pretty stable. The weather's great. They kind of call it a halfback state because people move to Florida. It's way too hot. They come halfway back and they end up in the Carolinas. I love the Carolinas. A lot of you know that. Tom is on. He asked about Birmingham. Again, I know a little bit about Birmingham. I know the aerospace industry down there is tremendous. I've had a friend live down there. I've had other people looking at it. That's one area, Tom, where you can buy houses in the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 range and get great cash flow. So again, nothing wrong with an area like Birmingham. Alabama is a great regulatory state. They're very landlord friendly. Pretty ease of business down there. So certainly if you can go down there and establish a couple good neighborhoods, spend a little time, see where the growth of the city is. There's colleges down there, University of Alabama, Birmingham. It's quite nice. Sanford College, quite nice outside of Birmingham. Obviously Alabama, and you got Auburn, you got all those places, but the city of Birmingham could be a great place to invest. So I'd be very high on somewhere like that. Talk about a few of these. I thought Donna Pina had a very interesting question. Hers was, any vacation destination, particularly near the beach, that may be a good investment property, maybe rent out most of the year and vacation there 2 weeks to keep it to a 14-day limit. It's up on the screen here. I was talking to a friend today that was down at the beach down in Ocean City. I guess he's in Fenwick Island. And I thought, one of my small regrets is, gosh, why didn't I invest down on Bethany, Dewey, or Rehoboth, even Ocean City? The value of those properties has gone up tremendously. So the answer to your question, Don, is there's tons of places you can do that. The first thing I would determine based on this question is, where do you and your family want to spend 2 weeks a year? I'm guessing you're going to go south, maybe north. If I could own a house in Cape Cod, boy, I would do it in a heartbeat. I love it up there. But the numbers got to work. And I know short-term rentals would be tremendous, but you just got to make the numbers work. So the first thing to do is figure out where you and your family want to spend some time. And I think that's important. Remember, it's not always all about the money, especially if you're using it this kind of realm. But, places like, Carolinas still have, anywhere around Wilmington, North Carolina, I think is great for that. I think, I'm not sure if you like Myrtle Beach. It's golfer's paradise. Some people call it the Redneck Riviera, but even south of Myrtle Beach, there's still some very, very good buys. All parts of Florida, you can still make some numbers work in areas of Florida that are fairly close to the beach. So I would look all through down there. There's also, too, we mentioned Alabama. A very popular area is the Gulf Coast. If you like those kind of sandy beaches, good water, you might want to head down there and check a look. Pensacola, Florida. Again, I spent a lot of time looking at Pensacola, Florida, because I had a tax-free exchange recently, and I got to know the market fairly well. And there's some very, very good buys down there still. Very, very affordable. that you still can do pretty well with the short-term rentals. Let's talk about that in a minute. The short-term rental game. Nothing wrong with it. It's fantastic. If you're a part of it, good for you. Just remember, the projections have been a little bit bloated in the last few years because of COVID. People have been taking off, working remotely, renting houses for a couple, 2-3 weeks. So I would be careful on your projections when someone is feeding those from the last few years. Try to get the last 5 years. Try to look forward. Most people in the short-term rental market are predicting that those revenues are going to be a little bit less. Okay, they're going to be a little bit less than what they have been the last year and a half, 2 years. All right, so be careful of that. But folks, as I answer these questions, if I can, Justin will put up my text number. If you need any more detailed or more time, I'd be happy to spend that with you. Let's go to another kind of very interesting one. Candace, Justin, you want to throw up Candace's question? This is a great question. Went to Punta Cana last year and decided this is somewhere I want to invest. I loved it so much I signed up to be a Keller Williams agent there. The prices there are steadily lower. Get there, and short-term rental market is appreciated over time. I'm going in September, take a look at some new developments and attend a conference. I'll go back again soon. Any thoughts for me? My thought for you is fantastic. If it's somewhere that you really enjoyed going, if you think that the numbers there make sense. Now, again, you're investing in a foreign country, so it might take a little bit more due diligence. You have to maybe look at some of the outside factors like hurricanes, some of those things, flood insurance. I mean, you have to factor all that in. Don't get too enamored with, I went to vacation there and I loved it. That's the first step. But I think what you're doing is going back, going to a conference, meeting other people, networking, getting a good idea of prices. All that is invaluable. It's invaluable. And that's when you're going to be able to make a decision. Try to take your emotion out because, folks, let's face it, whenever we go on vacation, the stress leaves our body after a few days. We have a lot of us might have a drink with an umbrella on it. We're not thinking about anything else. The environment looks great. There's no traffic. There's no phone calls. We're just relaxing. We're having a good time. So don't look through rose-colored glasses, meaning step back, go back, kind of look at it from an investment standpoint. Yes, I like to visit. Can I make money on this new development? Is the construction solid? Is the developer solid? Are there going to be too many short-term rentals in this area for me to make any money? All those things, start going through a checklist. But I think that's great. If there's somewhere that you like to go and you think has some potential, follow up on it. Follow up on it. I think that's tremendous. What else do we have? We had another interesting one. She always has some interesting investments. Flavia said she bought 11 acres in Lawrence County, at Lawrence in South Carolina. She was going to build MH. I'm guessing that's mobile homes and a retirement home. What do I think? I think it's great. Lawrence, South Carolina is kind of horse country down there. It's beautiful. It's kind of an hour outside of Greenville, South Carolina, maybe an hour or so outside of Columbia. And if that's what you want to do, setting up some mobile homes for income and building a retirement home, I think it's fantastic. Again, I don't think you can go wrong if you have a plan in place, if you're realistic, you're devoted to it, you're going to spend some time there. I think you do very, very well in some of those things. So
this has been a first. In my office building, we had a huge thunderstorm coming through, and the whole building went down. So I apologize for that. I'm not sure where we ended. We were talking about rental properties, some different markets to go in. And thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm on my phone here in the dark in my office. And talk about some specific areas, some cities. I would look, again, we kind of gave some of the metrics to look at: population growth, rental list price on the houses, states that have fairly friendly laws toward landlords. I love, obviously, anywhere in the South, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia comes up a lot. All through Florida is great. I'm trying to stay a little bit regional. I figure we have a little bit bias toward that versus going out to Salt Lake City, Spokane, Boise, Phoenix. But certainly there's plenty of markets in the West. Now they've grown tremendously in appreciation, so I think they're probably going to be adjusting or coming down. California, again, is just the regulatory is out there is just tough. So I think that's a little tougher market, but there's plenty of people making money out there. Another thing to do is follow the big boys like Invitation Homes. They have a huge portfolio of homes in Orlando, Charlotte, Austin, California, for that matter, Riverside, California. So sometimes following the big boys and going after, some rental properties in those markets can do well. They've obviously studied those. They have tools and analytics and brain power that many of us don't have. So just following their lead can also be a good indication of where you might want to invest in some rental real estate. Parts of the Midwest I love. I love Dayton, Ohio. I think Columbus, Ohio is another great market. You have a very thriving, obviously, Ohio State University and a big hospital system out there. I think that's a good market. And apparently a lot of young people are heading toward some of these mid-level cities where they can afford to live. I'll give you an example of my own son. He graduated from college and he got a job with a government contractor, kind of interned there, and his first job is as a project manager, scrum master, coordinating IT people. He's out in Indianapolis, Indiana, and, Indianapolis got a lot of things going on. His rent is dirt cheap, lives with a couple guys, banking money. He can live. If he came back to Washington, D.C., yes, he could have gotten a job, maybe gotten a little bit even more pay. But just the cost of living is so much higher here that he wouldn't nearly be able to enjoy as many things that he is out in a Midwestern city. Now, again, you have to want to live there, and you want to have like the weather and so forth, which he does. So that's something to consider too. But there's some great markets around. Now let's kind of morph into legacy properties. So after you've accumulated some rental properties, you have to just be enjoying the cash flow and sitting back. And time goes fast. I can't believe that. I've owned the properties I've owned for as many years as I have. Now, I've been doing some readjusting. I've been taking a few properties, selling them. I mentioned 1031 a few times on this broadcast, and moving some of those properties around, moving a few of them south, because that's eventually where I'll spend a little bit more time. And I just have some properties that I'm just not going to sell. I have some commercial properties, some very well located rental properties that I don't see myself selling. They work very, very well. They're fairly easy to maintain, and they generate, not only appreciation but some good cash flow because I've owned them long enough now. Some of you have bigger aspirations. Some of you want to own 100-unit apartment buildings or commercial, real estate of some level. And that's fine. And the way to get there is to learn that part of real estate investing and or tax-free exchange your way into those after over a period of time. Someone threw out a question, if my memory serves, about investing in Dallas or Houston or Cleveland, and just asking, fairly new, how many units is appropriate. That's a tough question to answer. All of that depends on your own abilities, your work experience, your comfort level with risk. That answer could be a single-family house. That answer could be a 4-unit, maybe to start out with, which a lot of people do. Or you might want to bypass all that and just go for it and, start buying 20-unit buildings or 100-unit buildings. Quite honestly, it's all the same. It's just the risk is a little bit higher, right? And the monies are a little bit higher. So it just depends where you want to go with this. But legacy properties, in my opinion, again, are properties that you want to own long term, that you're going to fund a college education with them, you're going to fund your retirement with them, you might pass them on to your heirs, whatever the case may be. And those are just good, solid, well located, income producing properties. And I kind of end with some of this. When you meet a very successful, wealthy real estate investor, you might not even know, because he might be sitting next to you at Starbucks. He might be sipping on his coffee. He might have a nice tan. He might have just a regular old car out in the parking lot, but he might be worth $100 million. You don't know. But a lot of those guys and gals and women and families have owned their real estate a long time. They bought them 20, 30, 40 years ago. They've kept them. They've maneuvered them. They've massaged them. They've refinanced them. They've paid them off. They've used them. And they're very, very wealthy because of that, because they were patient. They bought quality property, and they just held them long term. And so that's kind of the theme of tonight, is that get in the game. And if I can help you in any way, Justin, I think, is probably throwing that up on the screen. I'm sitting here in the dark corner of my office. Hopefully these lights come on at some point. But I hope tonight was a little bit helpful. If I can help you in any way, a lot of you know I do some very inexpensive consulting. If I can help you identify markets, if I can get to know you a little bit better and figure out your goals and help you with that, be more than happy to do that. My consulting, it's $500, 3 1-hour sessions. It's not anything. It's building a business plan, building a team, learning how to find properties, learning how to analyze properties, finding your first rental property, finding and coordinating your first flip. Just depends what you want to do in the business. If I can help you in any ways, reach out, let me know. Just side note, I am next few days going to be taking off for X amount of days, a little family vacation. My youngest son is heading off to school here in a few weeks. So as a family, we're going to take a few days and head out and take a little vacation. So if I'm not quick back to you, it's because I'm out with my family, but I certainly will get back with you. We will not meet in August. We've done that for many, many years. Just give everyone a chance to recharge. A lot of folks are starting school age, starting school. We'll be back in this. I appreciate you putting up with this power out here in the building. And I wish you well. This will help. If I can help you, reach out to my email and my phone. I wish you all a great rest of the summer, and we'll see you soon. Don't be strangers. We're out there buying, renovating, selling property, wholesaling real estate, making some loans. So stay in touch with us and take care, and we'll talk to you soon.